the teachings usually come from the practitioners. So I'm just going to guess where everyone's at, kind of shooting darts into the dark. I don't know where it's going to land, but one of the reasons is that the teachings by Hongzhi can be understood in a very deep way, a very profound way, and but also could be found in a quite straightforward way, So I will read these passages that I've selected, and I'll try to present different views. So hopefully it will cover most of your concerns and hit some targets. I don't know. Hongzhi talks about a cup and the cover, fitting perfectly. So the situation that we have now is there's a cover, and I don't know the size of the cup. So we'll see what happens. I selected these two because basically I was, about a week ago, I was writing some calligraphy, and I wanted to send a present, a gift to Jiliu Roshi, and I selected the verse from this longer excerpt. And I was looking around, and I said, okay, I'll just talk about this first. So it's on the way, Jiliu, to you. We already sent it. And that line is intrinsic luminosity manifest, blazing through your skull. I'll talk about that. And I was looking at different places for other quotes, and I came across this, the shorter excerpt. So I thought, that's a very basic one, so I'll also talk about that. I should also say that in Tallahassee, this slot of time from 5 to 7, we have thunderstorm. So tornado, okay, tornado watch. So in case the power goes out, then Venerable Jiliu will continue with the verse comments. And then when it clears up here, I'll sign on again. We'll see what happens. Hopefully there's no interruption. Let me begin with this first excerpt. This is from fascicle or chapter 6 of Hongzhi's extensive record. He has 9 different fascicles or chapters. So the text goes, at peace, under all circumstances, mind is pure and bright. Its luminosity is penetrating, able to respond smoothly in accordance with phenomena, where each and every phenomenon does not obstruct each other. Floating effortlessly, clouds appear on mountain peaks. Shining boldly, the moon is reflected and flowing in the mountain streams. Radiant luminosity and spiritual transformation manifest everywhere without the appearance of obstructions, mutually responding like a container and its cover, or like shooting arrows meeting at the tip. If we can share this excerpt on Zoom so people can see it, that would be great. And so this is the first one. So you see the English and the Chinese. It's important to include the Chinese because all translations faces this problem, because the Chinese language is so inclusive and nuanced. Sometimes a single character can be translated in many different ways. So this actually helps me to unpack and flesh out these nuances. Okay. The first line here is really talking about the foundation of Chan Zen practice. I say foundation because of this single character, peace, at peace. The Chinese character for this word peace, yes, it includes the meaning of peace, but it also has other nuances like relinquish, put down, letting go, or you can ask, how did it arrive at this word peace? It arrives at this word peace because one has put it down. So it's packed with meaning. Now, what is it that we have to put down? Why would we be at peace under all circumstances? Because that's certainly not the way normal people encounter the world. Things are not at peace. Things are chaotic. And we meet obstacles, challenges all the time. The people that we meet are it doesn't fit like a cover in its container. That's because of our baggage. Our baggage. And one of the biggest baggage that we carry around is, I mentioned this last week. This words and language that the Chan tradition really targets. You may think words and language are innocuous, it's something very natural, and it is something very natural, and we use it to help us to navigate through daily life. We are, after all, linguistic beings. But the problem with words and language through which we filter everything is that we start to invest all of our energy into them. We start to make them into reality such that the language that we have, the label that we use for things, we confuse it for the things themselves. So there's no longer this challenge, questioning. Right? The Buddha's teaching is wordless, unfathomable. Words and language reify and solidify them into specific things. And once they are solidified, they may bring some benefit, but the benefit becomes limited by the word choice, by the concepts and the baggage that surround this. I call all this process overlay. Overlay, right? So one of the things that reifies and fortifies our self-referencing is actually words and language. And from that extends out to the stories that we build, the conclusions that we draw from our experiences. We put it in specific containers. And we deeply, deeply identify with them. We don't really question our experience. You know? That's why we're not at peace. The circumstances that we meet, what we are experiencing is actually not the things themselves. What we are experiencing are our overlays. Yeah. And these overlays has a history, decades of history, rooted in our past experiences and the baggage that we carry, the proclivities that we have, the particular habit tendencies, perspectives that we see. Just this morning, one of my students was asking, is it today or maybe yesterday? So, people of color, POC, like myself, finding ourselves in white, predominantly white spaces. How, so he asked a question, how to hold our racial identity. After all, this is who we are, we think, right? How do we hold our racial identity in these spaces, interacting with others? He wanted me to talk about that. And I said that, if you hold the racial identities, the half of the battle is already lost. If we have this filter through which we experience the world, it's like putting up a wall. In order to have any connection with people, with circumstances, other people will have to climb over that wall in order to connect with us. There are multiple ways through which we can actually experience the world. Right? What kind of lens, like the glasses that we wear, what kind of lens do we use to experience the world? Right? Is it possible to hold not racial identity, to identify with freedom, interconnection, to use that as a lens, or gratitude to be whatever space that we find ourselves in, whatever lens that we use, that's what we will see. Why aren't we at peace? So this first line talks about, in its own way, not depending on words, language, not depending on prescribed, reified, formulaic teachings, to directly, not through overlay, but to directly experience what is it. Right? So when we don't inject ourselves in our experiencing, when we can temporarily bracket our sense of identity then under all circumstances, we're free. We can put it down. So that word peace, we should understand that the Chinese character has these nuances of peace that come from putting it down, letting go. So imagine experiencing the world without filters, experiencing others without lenses, fully open, vulnerable. Allow things to be what they are without our bracket, our container, our conceptions. So we allow things to be free in and of themselves. That's the foundation of Chan practice. And we're not talking about passivity. There is social injustice. There's all kinds of problems in the world. There's world war currently. But if everyone used their own lens to see the other, simultaneously they're selfing other. It's not selfing and othering. They're actually just selfing others. So the overlay, right? Then there's no peace. There's no peace. How do we dismantle that? How do we make this, what appears to be kind of habit tendencies, unquestioned ways that we experience the world, more porous, more relaxed, less self-referential practice? We're already free, yes, but we're stuck in containers. Every one of us carrying these containers. So this first line basically encapsulates the rest. At peace under all circumstances. When we are free from containers, mind is pure and bright. We are pure and bright. All things are pure and bright. I've given this analogy before, from the perspective of practice, to my students before. From the perspective of practice, all we see are different layers of vexations, different layers of obstacles, different sceneries. The mind ground is already open, already free. But because of the dense, deep-rooted habit tendencies and vexations that we have, we gotta dig through the layer. So in the course of practice, all we see is just layers upon layers. But we don't lose sight of the correct view. The correct view is already free, already at peace. Then we practice from that perspective. Then our relationship to these layers of encrusted habit tendencies will be very different. If we don't have this correct view that we're already free, and there's somehow some kind of lack, then our practice is just polarization, having, lacking, seeking, losing, gaining, relinquishing. It's just kind of engrossed in this. vicious cycle. So the correct view is already at peace. Yet, we face all the circumstances that come up. And respond appropriately. Right? Now, some of the circumstances that come up could be bliss, favorable circumstances, clarity, luminosity. Right? That's also a scenery. It's also a scenery. So the analogy I was going to say that I often talk to my kids and students is, the glass, the window. The point is just to clean the window. You clean the window. Right? That's from the perspective of practice, there's a window to clean. Right? So you just clean. But the truth is, there is no window. So when we clean the window, we can get to a state in which the window is just really clean. Right? But sometimes when the window is really clean, translucent, transparent, you think there's no window there. We're self-satisfied. And then we can actually hurt people, like the birds that fly right into the window. Because sometimes they die. The difference between the clarity of the mind, the purity, bright, right, of having a window with no window at all is completely different. No window at all is our true nature, already free. Right? The clarity from that, it's not stagnant. It doesn't happen only in sitting. Yeah. Stagnant means it's just clear, clear, clear. The selfless state of having no window at all, it's responsive, alive. There's nothing stagnant about it, nothing abiding. It's just clear. Yeah. So, this second line, mind is pure and bright. First, we have to learn to be at peace, learn to put down under all circumstances, put our self-referential experience of having, lacking, seeing the world through having, lacking, good, bad, gaining, losing. Learn to see through that. See through that. These things have a history. These things are accumulated. They're not you. Don't identify yourself with them. They come from decades of habit tendency. Right? What's preferable to you is completely different for another person. It's fine to experience that, but don't suppress it. Don't follow it either. Just acknowledge. Then, through that practice, when we're not so vestedly interested in that, locked into that, that's how to diminish their effect on us. Right? How you feel, what you think about certain things. Right? Don't be so vested in those things. Don't think that that's it. You do have an opinion. It's not that you don't have any opinion. You do have an opinion, but you know it, but you're not so tethered to it. You're not so tethered to it, kind of locked into it. Right? Because all of these feelings and opinions, they have something sharing. They're grounded in words and language and discrimination and containers. Everything. Just reflect. Reflect on your opinion about everything. Everything. And your feelings about everything. They're grounded in some kind of container. You're already free. You don't need to identify with them. They can help you to navigate in life. Yes, that's useful. But don't be used by them, so there's no separation between vexations. Yeah. That's how, when we are less and less tethered to what's coming up, that's how the mind becomes settled, pure, bright. But even this purity and brightness, that's another scenery. When we get to later, you'll see how Hongzhi deals with that. Right? So the first two lines is this foundation. Now, this luminosity, this clarity of mind can be exacting, right? Because the window is being polished very clear. So you see things clear. When there's less clutter here, correspondingly, what you see out there, readily apparent, very clear. You can see what needs to be done, what can be done. If it's too much here, too many rigid containers, too many structures, imprisoning us, then we don't see anything. You see? So the clarity can be penetrating, right? Because we're less tethered to our own feelings and thoughts, discursive ruminations. When we're with people, we're just completely open to them. So how they manifest, it's just it. There's no need to put them in boxes. So the way we relate to them is more relaxed. And they will feel it. There's nothing that we want from them. It's really precious to be with people that don't want anything from you. That they're just there, just present. For that reason, there's less obstruction. And this line here, each and every phenomena does not obstruct each other. Each and every phenomena does not obstruct each other. This is a line from one of the core teachings of the Huayan school. The Japanese pronounce it Kegon. Principle and phenomena. It's called a fourfold unobstruction. This is the highest state. The first one is unobstructedness with regard to phenomena. Second state, unobstructedness with regard to principle. Third state, unobstructedness with regard to the principle and phenomena. And the fourth state is unobstructedness between phenomena. This is the core teaching of the interpenetration of the Huayan school. So from that scheme of thing, and Hongzhi is very familiar with this, like these Chan masters, they're very well read, very well schooled in the Buddhist doctrine. Yeah. Even some of the famous Chan masters like Lingji, which is Ringzai, Deshan, that's the guy that invented hitting. He's a sutra commentator. He used to be a sutra commentator. They know exactly what these teachings are about. So you see this kind of paraphrased come out. This one's a direct quote, actually. So even with that teaching, the doctrinal schools lays it out for us. First, you gotta learn not to be obstructed by things around you, phenomena. Learn not to be caught up, not to be so tethered to them. How? Don't be obstructed with the principle, meaning you begin to learn the teachings, the core teachings. That's the principle, how things actually are. And how things actually are? Freedom. That's the true original face of this world, freedom. Learning, practicing in accordance with that, then unobstructedness with regard to the principle. Right? So first, don't be obstructed by manifold things. Learn to relax, to ground, expose all the things that come out within you and loosen your grip on them. Right? How do you do that? By understanding that all things are free, all beings are free. Right? They're just caught up with their stuff. Right? You're more relaxed to them. And the things that kind of come up, our relationship with them changes too. Right? We're already free. So that out of this freedom manifests all these habit tendencies, manifests all these ruminations. These ruminations and tendencies are kind of like your kids, your babies, they just manifest. So your relationship is not that of get rid of that in order to get this. Right? Your relationships is already free. Roam and play as you will. Right? When it affects other people, then you quench it down. Right? You expose their habit tendencies, you learn to transform them. Transform them with the correct view that you're already free. It's all good. Then, as the practice matures, principle and phenomenon, our relationship with the world, no obstruction. The opportunities to practice are everywhere. Every sentient being, every circumstance we find ourselves, expound the teaching to us. They reveal our shortcomings. They reveal our strengths. That's to be unobstructed with regard to principle and phenomena. So it's just opportunity to practice, to navigate. And because of all these difficulties or circumstances that we find ourselves, they draw out our resourcefulness. So it's something to be grateful to. So there's no longer the world against me. The world becomes a playground for the Bodhisattva practitioner. That's the non-obstruction. Here, the last stage, each and every phenomena does not obstruct each other, meaning there's no self. That's the state of awakening in which there's no self in all things. All things just miraculous interaction, interbeing, interfusion of the wondrous display of selfless wisdom and compassion. Right? And Hongzhi being very literary, give some analogy, allusions. Floating effortlessly, clouds appear on mountain peaks. Shining boldly, the moon is reflected and flowing in all the different streams. Radiant luminosity, spiritual transformations manifest everywhere without appearance of obstructions, mutually responding like a container and its cover, or like shooting arrows meeting in midair. So the selfless state in action, in the midst of the difficulties of life and the wonder of life, brings it to life, brings wisdom to life. So people who have kind of glimpses of this selfless state, they don't experience this. After the glimpse passes, then they can reify and solidify that experience as a thing, right? Like a memory that happened. Then they meet life is still the same old jerk, same old self-referential person. So only when a person is deeply awakened, time and time and time again and again, so that that person can be in the state of awakening and in the midst of doing work, going to job, dealing with family, dealing with the monastery, and tension, things, then you see how the selfless wisdom actually manifests. Right? It's tested. So that's what this is talking about. Right? Spiritual transformations manifesting everywhere. All things in themselves help themselves. It's not a person helping them, I'm helping them. It's just people themselves miraculously, wondrously, wonderfully, in the midst of their vexations, helping themselves. No obstructions. And here's the mysterious part. When a person is free from self-referentiality and in a state in which self is diminished, the things they say and the people they meet, they don't know why they say certain things. It's unplanned, but the things they say, it's directly what the person needs. Even the circumstances, the action that occurs. Why is that? Because the self-referencing gone. All the baggage is gone. So when they are faced with people, circumstances, real life situations, they're so in tune with what is actually happening without filtering. There's no self-consciousness involved. It's just a response. So wisdom is just selfless response. It's not a separate thing like wisdom versus compassion. The selfless response of wisdom is compassion. Right? And compassion doesn't necessarily come only in one fixed way, like always let people take advantage of you, always smiling. Nothing to do with that. It's just selfless. No agenda. So that is this. But this part is actually related to the text that follows. Right? If we continue to read, so Helena, if you post the next section. Right. Being unpretentious and empty, pure and still, cold and dispassionate, innocent, genuine. This is how to eradicate countless lifetimes of accumulated habit tendencies. Yes, you're already free, but habit tendencies run deep. How to do that? You don't follow nor you suppress vexations. Right? Innocent, genuine. This cold and dispassionate, cold and dispassionate to what? To vexations, to your feelings, to your ideas of things. Usually people is just the opposite, like their opinion of things, they're very passionate. How they actually feel, they're completely tethered to it. They're bound to it, like entangling vines. Right? This approach is you allow the entangling vines to actually wither away. The self-referential tendencies of how to see things, identities that we hold on to, containers that we put ourselves in, right? The lenses that we use to kind of see the world. Cold, dispassionate, pure, still, innocent, genuine. That's how to eradicate habit tendencies. Nothing to do with personality. You may think, wow, the practitioners has no feelings. No, nothing to do with personalities. This is completely talking about habit tendencies, vexations. So we can't kind of misread this. What are the habit tendencies? That's the luggage that I'm talking about. The moment habit tendencies and defilements exhaust themselves, here it comes. It's the line that I wrote for Jiryu. Intrinsic luminosity manifests, blazing through your skull. This is the moment of insight. And this insight, it's like for the first time, you discover that there's no window. All these years I've been polishing this damn window. Yeah, it cleans. Sometimes clean, sometimes not clean. Already clean. There's no window. Don't need to polish it. But it's personally attested. Now, the problem is windows can come back. Because usually people's insights and kind of flash of insight, it's not deep enough. It's not backed up with samadhi power. So it's just the habit tendency, kind of fumigations of habit tendency just kind of manifest again. Right? But this line is, we're talking about intrinsic luminosity manifest. It's not necessarily light that kind of, it's not a scenery. It's not a scenery. Scenery, there can be light and dark. Clarity, confusion. When we're talking about self-nature, there's no clarity and confusion. Completely irrelevant. Light and dark, completely irrelevant. So this luminosity is talking about seeing self-nature. Right? The window disappears. Blazing through your skull, through and through. I don't want to say the body, nor use a term like the mind. There is no boundary between this shell and what is. All is clear. Vacant of external things. If there's still external things out there, then whatever you experience is just scenery. You know, it's going from point A to point B, just in the middle somewhere, just seeing some sight, some scenery. Don't stop, keep going. This is talking about when the scenery drops, when selfing drops, othering drops, right? So vacant of external things, cleansed and spacious, like the merging of the sky and the autumn lake, like the sameness of snow against the winter moon. The field has no horizons or boundaries. It cannot be measured. What do words and language do? Words and language measures. Words and language draw demarcations. They draw boundaries. That's the nature of what we have always depended on all of our lives, that we think is true. All the labels and words and stories that we tell ourselves, their nature is to discriminate. Their nature is to demarcate, bifurcate, to draw boundaries. To measure more or less, having, lacking, wanting, needing. These things completely irrelevant with regard to your own state of being. It doesn't mean you kind of lose the ability of language or you become like a fool. You know exactly. Words and language help to navigate. But they have no way to encapsulate, to capture this freedom. Right? So no longer bound by them. When it is experienced as one vast, expansive continuity without any sharp corners or seams, this is the punchline. You must thoroughly relinquish this experience. So what? Isn't that what we're striving for? Isn't that the awakened state? Yes, it is. But this awakened state is shallow. Right? This awakened state is an experience. Right? Awakening is not experience. It's definitely not words and language. Definitely not concepts either. Right? So this, in the Chan tradition, it's called one whole sheet of awakening. Yeah. And many Chan masters experience this. In fact, good Chan masters does not actually verify students who have experienced this kind of stuff. Right? Like Chan Master Da Hui, he had like numerous experiences of like that's like this. And Yuan Wu Keqing says, no, it's not it. Right? Where before, after, having, lacking are completely cut off. Right? It's just one whole sheet of luminosity. And luminosity becomes a thing. So the experience of these kind of shallow states of insight, they can easily become a thing. Once they become a thing, you're dead. Right? Must put that down too. And the text goes, this relinquishing is not something that can be conceived of, theorized about through discursive reasoning. You can't describe it until you reach there. Right? How can it be gained through instructions or comments? Only one whose bottom of the barrel has fallen off can be convinced of this. Right? Let me tell you a story. One time, Dahui, every master that he visited, they all praise him. Oh, you learn what I have to say, what I have to teach. Please go on. Until he just got sick of it, and then he heard someone recommended him, actually a lay official, says, you should visit Yuan Wu Keqing. You should really visit him. So he goes there, gave himself some deadline. I'm going to visit him for a year, something like that. And Yuan Wu sees this guy coming. It's a vessel for the Dharma. And one time, he heard Yuan Wu giving a Dharma talk. And when he came across this line, let me see if I can remember. He came across this line that Yuan Wu himself was awakened to with his teacher, Wu Zu Fa Yan. Yuan Wu must be talking about giving some Dharma talk about practice, about his own experience. And he came across this line. Where do Buddhas come from? East Mountain walks on water. From where are Buddhas born? That's the literal translation. From where are Buddhas born? And then this is a gong'an, a koan from earlier master Yunmen, a few hundred years earlier. Yunmen says, the East Mountain walks on water. Upon hearing that, Dahui completely dropped everything. Just one whole sheet of luminosity. Before, after, cut off. That is, projection to the future, ruminating about the past. He's just completely vulnerable in the present. That's called the Great Death. The Great Death in Chan. Is the Great Death awakening? Kind of shallow awakening. Right? So he goes to Yuan Wu. Yuan Wu says, very rare that someone come to this state. It's very good, but not yet. Now, prior to that, Yuan Wu had denied him other experiences, but this one was different. And Yuan Wu says, from now on, I don't want you to do a single thing. Just be my attendant. When I'm entertaining guests, just stand next to me. When I ask you to bring food, you bring food. When I don't say anything, you don't do anything. Stay by me. Don't need to do menial labor, all the other stuff that other monks and lay people, nuns, have to do. That's just to sustain a monastery. All you need to do is just keep on asking. Where the Buddhists come from. East Mountain, walks on water. And then, so he's just like every day, he's just, for months, he's been in this state. Months. This is a unification state. Freed from vexations. So vexations are kind of dropped, you know. Self, very, very small. And then, you know, he's the entertaining guest, Yuan Wu, high-profile Chan master. He's the author of Blue Cliff Record, by the way, the 100 Cases of Koan. So one time, Da Hui is still in this state in which before and after a cutoff, he's just in this wonder, this wonderment. And clarity. It's not a single trace of wandering thought, discursive thinking. He's in that state for months. So one time, the dishes are put out, everyone's eating, and Da Hui reaches for the food. He got the food. And it's a small table, you know, it's like a private, the abbot's quarter. Everyone's sitting around. Yuan Wu's sitting here with his guests. Da Hui reaches out for the food and forgot to bring it back to his mouth. So he's like, he used the chopstick, he's getting the food, he's just like, he just stops. And Yuan Wu take a look at him, and you can just imagine all the other people are looking at him like, what the heck's going on with this guy? You know, and Yuan Wu laughs, says, don't mind him. He's cultivating the boxwood Chan. Boxwood, that's like shrubs, you know. They grow very dense and very slowly. It's like, it's not a quick pot, pressure cooker. This is a slow cooker, you know, grinding away, cooking, boiling. And then Yuan Wu turns to him and says, how does it feel? Da Hui says, it's like a dog looking at, you know, juicy oil. Now, this to Americans is probably, it doesn't make sense at all, but it makes perfect sense in Chinese because the Chinese people, they don't feed their dogs with like dog food. You know, they feed them like leftover crap, right? All rice and all the meat is all gone. It's just the juice left, you know, from the stir fry, whatever. So dogs, Chinese dogs love that. They love that fatty kind of oil, you know, from leftover stir fry stuff. So what he's saying is, it's so enraptured. He's just absorbed in that state, you know, in that state of wonderment. And Da Hui, later on, when the guests leave, he says to his teacher, this is sometime afterwards, this, when your teacher, Wu Zu Fa Yan, gave you this question, this critical phrase, where the Buddhas come from, East Mountain, walks on water. What did you say to him? Like, what was your realization? And Yuan Wu says, I'm not going to tell you. Says, what you gave this teaching in the Dharma talk before. What was it? I can't remember. What is it? Just come on. And then Yuan Wu says, no, I'm not going to tell him. So he's kind of taunting him, you know. It's kind of like blowing air into a balloon. You get it to the big size, big, and then you go for the kill. You know, so he's like, I'm not going to tell you. And Dahui said, you have to tell me. You've given the public talk. You gave the example before. I heard you talk about this before, but what was it exactly? I can't remember. How did you get out of this? You know. And Yuan says, you want to know? Yes, I want to know. It says, it's like the spring breeze blowing from the south, and the fragrance permeates for people up north. That's like saying, Guo Gu sneezes, achoo, and everyone over there in San Francisco gets wet with all of the snots and everything. So an answer is something like this. And upon hearing that, Da Hui shattered that state of awakening, that selfless state of just dead emptiness. That's what we have here, in which everything is smooth. Is it seeing self-nature? It is. You know, there's a Chinese line. It's also in fourfold axiom. Seeing self-nature, illuminating the mind to see self-nature. That's the full phrase. Illuminating the mind, see self-nature. Illuminating the mind is like the great death. See self-nature is great life, coming back to life. So this part, when the luminosity manifests, blazing through your skull, no inside, no outside, no before, no after, no external things, everything is spacious, merging like the sky and the autumn lake. Sameness of the snow and the winter moon. No horizon, no boundaries. This is a state of oneness. On a deep level, the state of oneness could be the great death. When this is experienced, this vast expansiveness without any sharp corners or seams, Hongzhi says, you must thoroughly relinquish this. Put it down. This relinquishment is the seeing self-nature. That's why it says, only one whose bottom of the barrel has fallen off can be convinced of this. So this is likened to the state that I was talking about. On one level, it could be a state of oneness, right? In which you polish the mirror, becomes so clean, the mind is just clear. Clear of what? Clear of all the rubbish, of all the containers, all the overlays, all the words and language, all the ruminations and story. Is the mirror, is the glass still there? It's still there, but it's translucent. Right? So it could be a state of oneness. You got to smash through that window. Right? Or it could be a state in which one has seen self-nature, but it's a shallow state. And the residue of these shallow states of seeing self-nature is usually unification. So no inside, outside, one side peace. And that can be mistaken It's just clear luminosity can be mistaken and taken as a thing. And that must be put down. And this is what Dogen talks about as once you feel you have awakening, you gotta put that crap down. Put down the awakening. It's the same thing, right? Thus it is said, only by actualizing it would one be in accordance with it. To be in accordance with it is to enter the world and roam and play in samsara, in samadhi, where everything manifests as it is. Sounds and form, shadows and echoes are engaged with directly, yet none of them leave any impressions or traces, lingering traces. In the midst of it all, it is as if there have never been any interaction or responses. Not being subjected to form, you will embrace the myriad form and appearances in the vastness of Dharma Dhatu. There will not be any outflows whatsoever. The person of true color must embody and investigate this in this fashion. Right? This word investigate is very important. And it's usually coupled with embodiment. So Hongzhi often use this word 体究, 体究. 体 means embodiment, right? 究 means investigate. So investigate through embodiment. So you must bring to life this state. There's a lot that could be said, to kind of flesh out more, but if it were to summarize what has been said so far, it would be first, learn to distinguish our overlays with what it actually is, how things actually are. That means we take ownership of all the ways in which we see the world, judge the world, experience and feel our way through the world. Through and through, they're ours. They're not the world. And learn not to. First, you got to distinguish it. Then you can really not be tethered by it. Not be locked into it. Then you're open yourself to possibilities, to alternative views, right? Everyone has their own opinion about things, right? Not so invested in like how you feel, what you think, right? Don't grasp it. Don't suppress it either. It is because of our freedom that they can manifest freely, that they can flow. When they are helpful to how we navigate the world, what needs to be done, what can be done, very good. When they start to become a problem itself, these identities that we hold, then put it down. Whatever we cannot put down, that's our obstruction. Remember that. Whatever we cannot put down, we're obstructed. It's not to say we don't need anything. I'm not saying that. Allow them to freely flow through. And they help the circumstance to navigate, fine. Right? But even in the midst of navigation, relating to others intimately, helping beings, not so locked up, tethered to this particular way of helping. There's no fixed form, there's no fixed approach. This is what the Platform Sutra means. Of Huineng, right? In the midst of thought, no thought. He didn't say no thought, just be a piece of wood, no thought. He didn't say that. In the midst of thought, no thought. In the midst of engaging in form, no fixed form. Right? So fully engage, allow them to be. It's because of freedom that they manifest. Right? That's the first takeaway. Once we can do this, we know what needs to be done, and we're clear about that. Then at the working end of practice, we know what needs to do. Right? It's not about getting blissful states. It's not about getting rid of our wandering thoughts. It's not about that. It's freedom that allowed them to be. Then when we sit dignified, embodied, present, right? Without grasping, right? Awake without reifying, identifying. And that is the embodiment in alignment with the principle of awakening. That approach is the union of practice and awakening, one. But if you're sitting there and you're identifying with the body, the sound, the wandering thoughts, the feelings, that's not sitting is awakening. That's just identifying with stuff. Does that make sense? Right? So freedom. At the same time, exposing all the things that come. Not tethered, not bound. That's the first takeaway. How to do that? Hongzhi gave us a kind suggestion. Right? His audience know what he's talking about when he used that each and every phenomena, non-obstruction. That's a set phrase. That's a set phrase in the Huayan teaching, right? It's like these colloquial expressions that we have in this culture, that when you say it, people know what you're talking about, right? Japanese is called kimari monku. Kimari monku. It's like set expressions, right? So when he referred to that, he doesn't need to elaborate on all the fourfold non-obstruction in the Huayan teaching. He just talked about the highest one. Then people know, because the other three that works up to that is, first, you gotta not be caught up with phenomena, right? Second, you gotta know the Dharma. That's how not to get caught up. So non-obstruction with regard to principle. And then you gotta begin to integrate the two. Non-obstruction between the principle and phenomena. Right? What you know, what you've learned, and what you experience. And then non-obstruction with regard to each and every phenomena. Right? So Chan doesn't really talk about stages of practice, Chan and Zen. That's usually shunned upon. And that's true. But this old grandmotherly Hongzhi, just put a drop into, okay, just non-obstruction, right? In reference to that. So people know, okay, first I gotta don't be obstructed by everything I'm facing. And then fully understand what the Dharma is. The way I put it is, it's all good. It's free. You're free. Right? And then how to live that, facing circumstances, that freedom, and all the muck that comes up, and all the things that we see, are favorable or unfavorable, non-obstruction. And then each and every phenomena will be free. Flowing effortlessly, clouds appear on mountain peak, right? Moon reflected in all the manifold streams. Sentient beings already Buddhas. That is the spiritual transformation that's miraculous here. That's the second takeaway. Right? First, put down ways in which we're tethered, to our words and language, discursive thinking, containers. That's what makes us not at peace. Second, learn between phenomena and principle. Right? 4 stages. That's one way to get to it. You can learn to embody, so it becomes effortless. And then the second paragraph, there are a couple of points. 1, with regard to habit tendencies, yes, you're free. But most of the time, we're just caught up with our own stuff. Right? These habit ways of seeing things, these pattern ways of behavior. How do you deal with that? Innocent, cold, dispassionate, not reifying. You're not suppressing them. You're not following them either. When we follow them, we're pretentious, because that's not how we truly are. Unpretentious, empty. You allow them to be present, but they exhaust in their own accord. So the first portion really talks about habit, tendencies, accumulated, lifetimes of it. Working through that with the understanding of freedom, untethered, not follow them, not suppress them either. That's how these lifetimes of habit tendencies will slowly and gradually not have a hold on you. Right? And then, once this processes of selfing and othering becomes diminished, then suddenly it's possible that the weakest point, when the selfing, this grasping is the most vulnerable, suddenly they can vanish away. Right? It may not be thorough, but that's when the intrinsic luminosity manifests. Manifests blazing through your skull, you continue to practice. Right? Don't make anything into a thing. That's the biggest takeaway I'm taking from here. Don't make anything into a thing. That's what the selfing does. Whatever powerful experience, whatever blissful state, whatever you think you know, that's what we do. We make everything into a thing, and then we're dead. The wisdom life is there. It's just, it becomes locked in, no longer flows. Right? What keeps it going is openness, humility. You can call it also wonderment. Just not knowing. We think we know something, instead, don't know. Open to it, right? Responsive, alive. So this section is kind of for seasoned practitioners, practicing for many decades. Whatever powerful experience you've had, don't make it into a thing. So Mazu, Chan Master Mazu always says, ordinary mind. Ordinary mind is the way. Don't make anything into a big deal, because that's what we do. That's what grasping do. It makes everything into something special. Nothing special. Ordinary mind. Put it down. Put down powerful experiences too. Then the bottom of the barrel, drop away. Right? So the first excerpt is for kind of beginners, intermediate. The second long one is for seasoned practitioners. Right? They know they're free, but they're working through lifetimes of habit tendencies. Right? And if they ever have powerful experiences, it's fine. Put that down too. Right? Put that down. Okay? Did I hit anything? Did I hit any targets out there? We'll have an opportunity for Q&A, but I really want Venerable Jiru to also say some words to share, and then we can open up. Thank
you. Thank you. Yeah, so many darts have landed right here. And I feel everybody here is riveted. An hour and a half later, no one has taken a breath. We're completely with you, completely energized and inspired. And it's very beautiful. So thank you so much for your teaching.
Do you see any resonances with Dogen's teaching?
Yes. So I still a little bit have this hat or this frame of wanting to tease out or think about what's different and what's the same in the way that these two lineages have unfolded on separate tracks over several centuries.
Yeah.
And that, yes, it's the same. What you're teaching is completely resonant with Dogen. Of course, Dogen was a great admirer of Hongzhi. And so we could say, yes, it's all the same. Let's leave it there. And that's wonderful. And also there may be something. I was struck in looking into the practice of silent illumination. I did what Zen people everywhere should do, which is Wikipedia. So if you go to Wikipedia for any Buddhist knowledge, is actually quite good. Wikipedia, more often than not.
I'm scared to look at what Wikipedia has to say about Silent Illumination.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what it does. If you go to Silent Illumination Wikipedia, it redirects to Shikantaza.
Okay.
It redirects. So maybe somebody will change that after this conversation, but that feels off to me. That feels not quite right to just say, I think somebody please correct that. Silent illumination should not redirect to Shikantaza. To do so is kind of to miss this opportunity of seeing how these great lineages have evolved, emphasizing different pieces of the wisdom. So what I am feeling in this energy and inspiration and the great kind, you say this grandmotherly thing of giving us all something to look forward to. I want this. I want the peak and the clouds and the seamless and then the letting go of the seamless. And yes, hallelujah, I want all of that. And there's a kind of lean, a kind of grasping, and there's energy. And so this is the trade-off. There's something, it was very kindly put in front of us to hope for, to imagine, to dream into, to lean towards, and then we have energy for practice. Soto Zen, the way it's evolved more often is so worried about then the lean. So the question in the inspiration that we're all sitting in, where will that inspiration go? I find myself already trying to manufacture some of the feelings that Guo Gu has so kindly described an enlightened person as having. So like, oh, maybe I, find that. And now I've taken the energy and the inspiration, and it's become an obstacle. Is that energy, when the Zen, the Chan is perfected, all of this energy is generated, and it just comes back to this person being this way in this moment. And that's the subtlety and the beauty, I think. And so making the mistake of being inspired and then risking that we lean a little bit and then hear this teaching of what we're inspired for is the actual life right here. So
Can I say something?
please.
I think what can be possible is like the key is, if we take the key as don't make anything into a thing, right? If we take that as the kind of principle, when we walk, we're bound to see sceneries, like if you walk from point to point B, you walk from this road or that alleyway, there's going to be sceneries. If you don't walk, then nothing can be seen. So when we practice, there's going to be stuff that come up. So if we just, and some of them are blissful, some of them are wondrous design. I want, like you said, I want this, the mountain peaks and the Hongzhi's habit tendency is to bring up his literary skill. He paints everything so beautifully, so everyone's like, "Wow, I want that." But I think he's still saying the same thing that Dogen says: "Don't make anything to a thing. Even if you think you're awakened, drop it." Right? So the energy we have to recognize that when we practice, things are going to come up. What do we do with that? What do we do with that? When I teach my student, I say, overlay. It's very good. It's very good, but it's overlay. Keep going. You can encourage them. Okay, overlay. Don't make anything to a thing. Practice diligently. Diligently, yet don't seek anything. Right? So it's almost like Dogen is saying the bare bone of what it is about, whereas Hongzhi, because of his habit tendency of just literary genius, that's what happens when geniuses become awakened. He just kind of flesh it out with all these beautiful imagery, but basically the core is the same, I think.
I think one piece, and I really want to hear from folks. I'm glad there's some time left, and let's see if I can get at this. Maybe one way to say it as the kind of in our actual life, the dual aspect of awakening and delusion in all of us in our actual life. And I think there's a tendency in Soto Zen to talk less about kind of an enlightened person who is fully identified with that awakening, and more about some ease in enlightenment and delusion, which of course is also what Hongzhi is pointing to. A way that Suzuki, as you've been talking and as I've been looking at these verses, that there's a statement from Suzuki Roshi, the San Francisco Zen Center, Soto Zen founder, Suzuki Roshi, which I've been quoting a lot. It's really been alive for me lately. And he says, you're more concerned with your problem than with the fact that you're alive. And that to me, you're more concerned with your problem. That's the overlay, the obstruction. then with the fact that you're alive, the fact that you're alive is, that's the level at which you're completely supported by everything. The way that the fact of our being already is totally, is nothing but everything else. Everything is supporting that. Everything is perfectly harmonious with that. There's no obstacle. Everything that we might think is an obstacle or a problem is actually just giving us our life. That's just the fact of our life. So that distinction, that's not really a distinction. They're always together. There's the problem, and then there's the fact that we're alive. And I think that's such a beautiful way to put it.
Mm.
I often use the golden lion, Guo Gu, the golden lion, as such a wonderful, like, you want to have the Buddha nature or this awakening without the delusion. Is kind of like, I want gold, but not in any shape. I want to see gold, but don't give me a shape of gold. I just want the gold. But of course, gold only comes in a shape. That's the image of from Fatsang of the golden lion.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about this fact, I guess, the getting excited about what if, or these moments, or this way of being that would be nothing but the fact, that the only thing in my experience would be the fact that there is, the fact that I am. That's inspiring and wonderful. And also there's a kind of, I think, a softer way where there's just the fact and the problem. And it's just, as you've been saying, non-fixation with the problem. Always the problem is in the background of the fact that we're alive. Appreciating that. A way, maybe a more concrete way that an image maybe that also gets to a little bit of difference in just stylistic in how it's talked about, could relate to the bottom of the bucket, which also is such a wonderful, the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the bucket falling out. It's such a beautiful, like this, it's like this burden that I used to be able to carry, I just can't carry anymore. This vessel that used to hold confusion and delusion and hatred, like it doesn't hold the water anymore. I pick up the bucket, hoping that it's going to hold all my indignation or anger or longing or arrogance or whatever fixed view. And it's like it just doesn't hold the water, so the bottom of the bucket dropped off. And I was looking at your translation and really appreciate it. Says, when the bottom has fallen off. And so a little bit about enlightenment experience and about sudden and gradual, and about whether this experience, as Dogen often insists, don't look for this. And you've also been saying this, Guo Gu, this is not something that is to be thought of as an experience that will arise in your consciousness or that will be met with perception. Dogen says that very clearly. Don't think you're going to perceive this. Realization is not an object of your experience. There's a way that Suzuki Roshi talks about these different models of what it's of awakening, between the thunderstorm, and maybe you all are having a thunderstorm now, but a thunderstorm, there's a flash of lightning and a downpour, and you become soaking wet, and you're very aware that you just got wet and everything has changed. And then there's, which is in this image, which he uses, which is very resonant for those of us here at Green Gulch Farm by the ocean, where we're always draped in a fog. He says, our way is more like walking in the mist. We walk in the mist, and then after some time, notice that we're soaking wet. And so it's not to not think of it as something, and I think this helps with the relinquishment. I think this teaching actually can help with the relinquishment of just relax, just walk in the mist, and you notice, oh, this barrel doesn't hold what it used to be able to hold. It's not like all of a sudden the bottom fell out and it all burst. That may happen, and how wonderful, rare and beautiful occurrence. But there's lots of ways for barrels to degrade. The bottom of the bucket just sort of rusts out and gets little holes. And then, a few years later, you pick it up and like, oh, I thought there was something in here. I was like, but it can't hold it anymore. So that, in a way, it's a kind of gradual path, but it's sort of, we just, to not think of this as something that we're going to like get to experience, but more,
Just keep walking.
just keep walking. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. So I wonder, maybe just a question, and then I want to give it to the others in the room. What do you make of this emphasis, again and again for Dogen Zenji of, realization itself is not met by a deluded mind. This will not appear in consciousness. Buddhas don't get to know that they're Buddhas even. We think it's going to be great to be a Buddha because we'll know it. That feels important, and I'm curious your perspective. It also seems like it's not making it an object. It's not thingifying. So maybe that's just offered as kind of reinforcement of that. Just keep walking. Don't look for this as something that you're going to get, but try to use the energy of the inspiration to keep walking.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Hongzhi actually have something similar. He used to talk about the jade in the mountain, embedded in, encrusted in all this stuff, doesn't know that the jade is precious. Yeah? Or Americans don't really like jade, they like diamonds better. But like the diamond doesn't mean, hey, I'm a piece of diamond. Look at me. I'm just so happen to be encrusted by things. Once I get it off, then I can really shine. It's ridiculous, So this refers to, on the one hand, like you say, about don't reinforce, don't reify, don't think of having, lacking, wanting, needing, like this kind of polarized way of thinking. Just keep walking, On the other hand, it also points to something that the self-referentiality always do, and that is self-consciousness. Self-consciousness, like a commentator. In Chan, we also refer to this as the thief mind. The thief mind. This is the mind. This is the most, you could say, is the most raw form through which grasping manifests. Self-consciousness. It's making ourselves into a thing, and then we can comment on it. Oh, you're doing a good job. Oh, look at that. You're wonderful. You just experienced a diamond. That's a very concrete way in which self-referentiality manifests, this self-consciousness. So be aware of that. So when we are doing things, we're just fully with the thing. There's no standing outside looking at ourselves doing things. There's no commenting, judging, assessing, calibrating, navigating how to respond. All of these manipulative ways is the ways in which the self manifests. And that is like the jade in the mountain, right? Or the diamond in the, what do you call it? The diamond in the rough, or the most important thing is just not reify, continue. Right? All the ways in which we assess ourselves, measure ourselves, judge ourselves, all of that are overlays. So a concrete way of interpreting that, like the question that you raise, is that's something to kind of be aware of. That's how I share with my students.
Guo Gu, thank you so much for roaming and playing in Samadhi with us for the benefit of all of us here. And of course, as you said, for the benefit of all beings. Of course, any merit, any awakening, any wisdom, any deepening that comes through your beautiful, inspiring words today, we enjoy and appreciate, and then offer out that it may be a balm for others, that others in the suffering world may know this freedom that we all already are. Thank you.
Thank
Helena,
you.
maybe you have closing words, Guo Gu. Thank you so much for this opportunity to sit together and your generosity in offering teachings here for us.
Thank you. I want to say just all the teachings here, the sharing and your teachings and all the questions, of of course, transfer to all beings, and also the financial support that you generated will be directed to Dharma Relief 2, which is the healing racial trauma. This Dharma Relief is an organization. Dharma Relief 1 was about getting masks to different centers to help them during a time in which there was a shortage. Dharma Relief 2, DR2, is established when George Floyd was murdered, and through different teachers from different lineages coming together to establish a fellowship. And we've given out 5 fellowship to 5 fellows, kind of budding Black Dharma teachers to support them. And so we still need funds. So this teaching, whatever generated the dana for me, will actually go to that organization. So if you want to know more, you can find out more. Dharma Relief 2. So we welcome your support. Thank you.